So, Elizabeth, I'm sitting here wondering, in your life, have you ever broken up with someone, but you've kept things from that relationship, things, leftovers, trinkets, love letters, poems?
Abso-friggin-lutely. Who the hell hasn't?
You have.
Have you? Okay, I guess who the hell hasn't is you.
I don't think I've been ever given anything worth keeping.
It's funny you should ask, because I've just moved house and I was going through my filing cabinet and I found a little folder called sentimental stuff that I'd forgotten that I had.
Yeah.
And so I have like letters from about 20 years ago from different partners, one of whom was one of my first ever boyfriends that I still to this day think is my one that got away. And it was this letter where I had broken up with him because I was like, I feel like you want to keep me a secret and we never go out anywhere and you just tell me that you love me but you never show me. And he showed up to my door with this huge bunch of roses and this letter that said, this is the beginning of me showing you that I care for you through actions, not just words. But I was already with someone else when he showed up at my door with that. But I still have that letter and a bunch of other like photos and keepsakes because I'm just like, I'm sentimental at heart, I think.
I'm sure it's a wonderful nostalgia rush to unearth those treasures that are years and years old. I would be horrified if an ex-partner of mine had kept my shitty poetry and all my terrible musings on love and romance. I would be horrified. So there you go, readers.
I think that's adorable. Someone somewhere has your poem in a frame on their wall, Tom.
Yeah, I highly doubt that. Well, hello one and hello all to Ghosts of Boyfriends Past. Elizabeth Best across from me and I'm Tom Harris. Do you keep trinkets from your exes in life?
I want to hear what's the weirdest thing that you've ever kept. I want to hear about everything that you've kept. So if you can write in to all the normal places, ghostofboyfriendspast@gmail.com. I want to hear what's the weirdest thing you've ever kept and just in general, what have you kept?
One of you out there has got a weird
like
thing.
You've got a
freaky thing.
Gross.
Come on, let us have it.
We want to know. This is a main episode, which means we have a guest.
Yes, we do.
And it's a very special guest because as I've mentioned a couple of times in past episodes, I got invited to a lovely lunch at the end of last year from Bumble to talk about dating trends. So we have Lucille from Bumble joining us to go through those very trends on air today.
Come on
Welcome,
down.
Lucille.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on to talk about these things because it's important when you're out there dating to know sort of what to expect and what you can be, what you should be doing and what you could be in for when you flick open the apps.
Yeah, now Elizabeth and I like to jest that we are somewhat dating relationship experts, but that's only so deep. However, we have someone that works for an actual dating application an actual expert.
How old are you? A dating application?
Now, yes, exactly. I will yes and that question. Lucille, you work for an endeavor called Bumble. I'm a man in a relationship, so I don't need this
He's
currently.
happily coupled up.
And
it's gross.
we have elder leaning listeners who
we've
don't
got
know.
everyone. We've got young, we've got old, we've got in between. So for anyone who isn't on the apps and hasn't heard about Bumble, can you give us a bit of a rundown on what Bumble is and what the philosophy is like, etc.?
Yeah, of course. And I'm sure everyone that's listening is young at heart.
Absolutely. They wouldn't be listening otherwise.
Yes.
Yeah. So Bumble is a dating app and it has quite a different backstory to most dating apps. So our CEO and founder, Whitney Wolfhard, had worked for other dating companies and had a really negative experience online after leaving a previous job. And she found herself, this was back in 2016, so sort of pre-Me Too, pre-Time's Up, thinking about how negatively she'd been treated online with her dating experience and sort of looking around at her single friends and thinking, you're all really smart, you're all amazing, you're all, breaking the glass ceiling at work, not standing for any kind of, gender inequality in most parts of your life. But then they would meet a man and they'd be like, oh, well, I'll just wait for him to ask me out, or I'll wait for him to ask for my number. And she thought, this is crazy. Why is dating the area where these gender roles are still so traditional when we really don't accept that in so many other parts of our life. So she came up with the idea of Bumble, where women have to make the first move in heterosexual connections. And the idea being that how much of the traditional tensions that existed on dating apps could you change by putting women in control of the conversation, by giving women the power over who they interact with and how those conversations start? Do you foster healthier, more respectful conversations and ultimately healthier and more respectful relationships? And I think, her success has been proven with the success of Bumble and the thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of happy relationships and engagements and weddings and Bumble babies that exist all over the world.
One thing that we've talked about on this podcast before, because we had somebody who was unwittingly doing very great PR for you guys,
yes.
Where they were stood up on a date and they reported it to the app. They weren't going to, and they thought, no, bugger it, I'm going to report it. And the person who stood her up was blocked, and then Bumble sent her flowers and chocolates, which I thought was actually quite sweet. But
sweet.
The thing that I have noticed anecdotally from Bumble is that it tends to be quite swift acting if people are being inappropriate on the app to try and keep it as a safe space, which I very much appreciate.
And I think really rewriting the standards of what is bad behavior and what's unacceptable in dating. So it's not just getting ghosted. It's also if that person made you feel uncomfortable in any way, if you felt pressured in any way, these are all things that you can and should report, because those opportunities also often, I'm going to speak about men in this scenario because it is often, relationships between men and women that we're talking about. But obviously, I don't want it to be too much of a heteronormative discussion. But a lot of the time when you report someone on an app, what you do is you give us the opportunity to educate them about, hey, this comment you made is unacceptable for this reason, and this was a topic that came up a lot for us about 1 or 2 years ago when we introduced much stricter and clearer policies around things like fetishization and body shaming, because what we noticed was a lot of people that were making comments, particularly in those two areas, particularly with racial fetishization and body shaming, where they thought they were flirting.
Yes.
They thought they were giving compliments. Yes. And it's like, well, no, we know that that's fetishization or that that's shaming behavior, but by encouraging people to report that, it's giving us an opportunity to educate and try and change behavior. So that's why I would encourage anyone using Bumble or any app to report anything that they don't like. Be fast and loose with that rule.
So do you guys, just because I've had a few friends who've been banned from non-Bumble dating apps and had no idea what they did wrong, does Bumble make an effort to kind of explain then and educate them on what went wrong so that they understand what's happened?
In a lot of cases, yes.
Yeah.
That's the goal. And I think that we also give warnings,
Great.
And I think that's a really important step where it's like what you've done might not constitute, letting you never use the app again, but we're going to intervene at this point and say, hey, that language you use to describe someone's body is actually dehumanizing, and here's a link to our resources to educate yourself on why that isn't okay, rather than just sending them off in the world to go and do that again somewhere else.
I love that.
That's really, really important to hear. I'm really glad to hear that from you, Lucille, because my sort of position as a non-app user is that these apps all look good and really sound like great ideas, good initiatives, but all we need to do is fix the people using them. It's fixing a sort of across the board tightening of behavior,
it's
like
educating
what's raising everyone's behavior
standards
on these apps. So that's, I'm glad to hear that.
So let's talk trends. So at the little lunch that we had, which was stunning, we had chats about some of the things that we can expect to see in 2023. So can you take us through a couple of those now and we can have a bit of a chat about them?
Yeah, I would love to. So what was most interesting was throughout this process of identifying these trends was reflecting on the year that was 2022. And for a lot of people, it was quite a turbulent year. It was the return of travel. It was the return of office work. It was the return of dating, because 2020 and 2021 were defined by lockdowns and border closures and fear of illness and all sorts of things that, you know, it isn't fully gone away, but improved a lot in 2022. So the types of trends that we saw throughout 2022 with things like sober dating, you know, because people had got used to not being able to go to the pub or being able to go to the pub less, and things that were reflective of like the year that they had been through previously. What's really exciting about the trends for this year is that they're very positive. 70% of people surveyed said they're feeling positive about dating going into the new year. And the trends are really about challenging the status quo. And as we get into the trends, you'll understand more of what we mean by that. But it's really about challenging the set idea of what you're meant to do in dating, the type of person you're meant to date, the type of person you have to be when dating. And that's great for us because Bumble has always been about challenging the status quo. You know, it's always been about encouraging people to think differently about gender and dating and relationships. So
you guys were doing it before it was cool.
Yeah, exactly. So this is really exciting to be talking to you about this.
Yeah, great. So kick us off. What's one of the first things that we can expect to see in 2023?
Well, this is one I would love to know your opinions on, because the first trend is called open casting, which is the opposite of typecasting. And 42% of Bumble members in Australia said they're more open to dating outside their type. And I think that is like really cool, fascinating thing to do, and probably reflective of the fact that the last couple of years have just been such a, you know, a scramble for so many people that it's like, okay, I've had to change my whole life in different ways. Why don't I change this thing that I've been doing as well? So, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on breaking your type as well.
I think it makes a lot of sense, although it's sometimes hard to convince your heart that it makes a lot of sense. Because, you know, obviously if you've got a particular type and you're still single, that type has not worked for you. So it makes a lot of sense to date outside of that type. But then when I go on yet another date that I think is a little bit beige, I'm like, oh, why doesn't this person excite me? And it's just, I think you've got to really reiterate to yourself that slow burns are possible and that you don't have to have the zing and the spark of what normally excites you if you're going to date outside your type. What do you reckon, Tom?
It makes sense to me. We all have our types and wants in a partner or partners. But if you only want blondes, but then those blondes have to have brown eyes, and then they have to be 5'4" to 5'5". You're just shrinking.
Segment is so small.
You're just shrinking
and they have to be nice people on top of all of those other things.
Right. So you're just shrinking and shrinking this tiny percentage of people that you could possibly ever be happy with. No, you need to go, okay, I'm going to try dating a redhead and see how you do. I think it makes sense.
I know, and that's when you often hear people say, oh, there's no good people out there, there's no good men, there's no good women, and it's like, well, there's many people out there in the dating pool if you are open-minded about what you're looking for. And I think being overly picky can limit yourself. And I think there are things that you should be really set on. Is someone kind? Is someone generous? Is someone funny? Do they make you laugh? Do they make you feel good? All of those things aren't the type of things that you should be sacrificing in looking for a partner. But whether or not they're 6 foot or have muscles or, you know, what type of job they do, all these kind of things are really things that I think that we can afford to start to let go of a bit. And that actually did come through in the research as well, that people are starting to prioritize emotional maturity over physical appearance, which I think is so important.
Goodness. I've been waiting for this. That's why I've been out of the dating pool for so long, because everyone's emotionally immature.
And
I can't promise a pool of eligible
Look,
dating bachelors that
one
are
or
all
two is
fully
okay.
ready to
A
go,
pool I don't need.
but they're trying. The research tells us they're trying.
That's really good to hear. And I think because of the whole 2020 to 2022, you're stuck inside. There's a lot of self-reflection that happened, I think. And so I think a lot of people are kind of realizing that they might also be the problem. And so starting to date outside their own type might actually help them along their journeys.
Exactly right. And also, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but people dated differently during the period of time we just talked about. People weren't going out to pubs and clubs and, making out on the dance floor for a variety of different reasons. If you weren't in a state that had a lot of lockdowns, maybe you still didn't feel comfortable, pashing strangers during this time.
Yeah.
And fair enough. So people started dating in other ways. They were doing video dates, or they were doing park dates, walking dates, coffee dates. And the thing about those kind of dates is they really prioritize conversation.
It changes the whole emphasis, hey?
Yeah. And so I think that is a big contributing factor to this trend, because it's like, well, I've actually been talking to the people I've been on dates with, and that's made a big difference and made me realize that kind of connection is more valuable than maybe that initial physical attraction.
Yeah, that's interesting. It does make a lot of sense. And so what's the next one on our little list?
So the next one is guardrailing, and over half of the people in the survey spoke about guardrailing, which is really about boundaries. So as we are putting up, going back into offices and social life's picking up again, travel's picking up again, all of a sudden our schedules feel packed again when, a year ago I felt like I had nothing to do. And so it's about protecting your energy and protecting your time. And so being intentional about how you date, and not overcommitting to things, and not saying yes to a date on a Tuesday night because that's the only night you have free for 2 weeks, and then getting somewhere and realizing you don't really want to be there.
As a big fan of setting boundaries and a big fan of having my own downtime and not overcommitting myself, I couldn't love this one anymore. And I love the fact that I think the last couple of years has caused us to reprioritize the things that actually matter in life as well. So having that balance, I think, will actually make us better at dating, because we will have more of ourselves to give on those dates rather than being frazzled or not really wanting to be there. So I think it can make them more authentic.
It's a great trend, and I hope it yes-ands into encouraging people to understand their boundaries and being familiar with that, but also educating and asking and describing those boundaries to other people, let your partners know your boundaries, letting your friends know your boundaries,
and communicating. It's not about you. I just need sleep. I really like
right.
you.
Yeah.
I'm having fun. This is great. I also really like sleep.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think a way that presents itself on Bumble in particular is communicating how you want to date or what you're looking for in your dating experience with your matches. So in particular, that comes to what type of relationship you're looking for. So if you're looking to date to find a serious relationship, be upfront about that. And if you're looking to just date casually, be upfront about that as well. Both things are fine, but what you'll find is that if you don't have a clear idea of what your intentions are, you aren't going to attract the right people, or you're not going to attract people that are aligned with you. And you might end up wasting a lot of time with people that don't have the same intentions as you. And I think that's where a lot of dating experience, I think that is what brings a lot of dating experiences unstuck at its core, is those two people didn't enter the situationship or the date or whatever it ends up being with the same intentions. And maybe they weren't upfront with each other about what they wanted to get out of it. And that's where you end up with people going on, 5, 6, 7 dates, and then working out at that point that one's feeling casual and one's wanting to be more serious. So just say it from the start.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I mean, that just sounds so easy though, doesn't it? Just say it from the start. But I know a lot of people who still have trouble with those kinds of things, because they're like, well, if I say that I want a long-term relationship, what if I scare people off? And I keep saying to them, Lucille, you're only going to scare off people who don't want a long-term relationship.
Exactly. And there is also ways of, you're exactly right that should be the goal. The goal should be to scare off the people that aren't aligned with you.
Exactly.
So it is a big mindset shift from thinking, I want to go on Bumble and get 100 matches and getting that validation, to actually 5 matches is great if those are people that I have potential with or that are aligned with me. It's not necessarily about trying to match with everyone and go down that road. It's like it's quantity isn't it. It's quality matches that can actually have the chance of going somewhere. And that's a big mindset shift as well. But also thinking in that terms of, you know, if I am alienating people that aren't aligned with me, is that an issue?
Yeah,
no,
great.
That's what you're aiming for. Get them
then
out.
I'm not wasting my time. Boy bye or girl bye or anyone bye.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Okay. I'm liking these trends. They're making me feel less anxious about dating in general. So where do we go from here?
So the next one is called love-life balance, and that has a lot to do with our relationship with work and our love lives. And what it is reflective of is our professional status being less relevant in our romantic lives as what it used to be. Not less relevant, but they're just being less emphasis on work life, and having a really busy, demanding job being less of a status symbol than what it used to be. So we aren't actually looking for a partner that doesn't have time, or we're seeing it less as like a big status symbol if they have like a really hectic work life. What we want is people that are going to prioritize quality time. So that's not to say that people with busy or demanding jobs are out of the dating pool, but it's just people really being focused on that quality time and less focused on like bagging someone with a great job and thinking about what else does this person bring to the table.
That's quite often one of the first things that you ask when you're on a date, isn't it? What do you do? But that's usually just because I can't think of anything else to ask.
Yeah. It's the first question you ask when you meet people in most social settings, because it's just an easy thing to learn something about someone. But
I don't really care about what they do.
Yeah,
are you happy? It's like, you can't really ask that straight up though, can you? So are you happy? So people might start crying. Look, I really like the idea of having that balance and having the, you know, like it's not all about money. It's not all about, you know, like, oh, I'm so busy I can only fit you in on, you know, 2 weeks from Tuesday kind of thing. Because then like what kind of quality of relationship are you going to have if you're both not similarly, I guess it's alignment again, isn't it? Being aligned with the kind of life that you want rather than the kind of status that you want.
Yeah, I think it's putting a big focus on compatibility.
Yeah.
And shared values and all those things that what you do for work kind of doesn't really have any bearing on those things. You know, so it is that focus of, is this person intellectually, emotionally, sensually compatible with me? Those things are more important than you know, what do they do from 9 to 5 when I'm not with them anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Boring. Don't care about what you do for a job. As long as you can support yourself and you're not going to sponge off me all the time for money, I don't care.
Yeah, and if someone is passionate about, you know, what they do and that aligns with their values and that is an important part of their identity, that's great, you know, but your work doesn't have to define your whole life, and it doesn't really have an impact in your romantic life either.
Yeah, good.
Do you think we're seeing less and less snobbiness in terms of when it comes to a partner's occupation? Do you think do you think we are caring less with what they do or how much they earn, where it is angling down?
Definitely, because also I think the pedestal that people's jobs were on got knocked down a few pegs by working from home.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
like that was a bit of an equalizer in terms of, especially corporate jobs that you like, this is obviously, you know, people that can work from home, but it was a bit of an equalizer in terms of like, okay, what are we all actually doing? And, you know I was living with friends during the first lockdown who had like very impressive jobs. And I remember being like, what do you do all day? Like listening to other meetings and, things like that. So I think it's just reflective of the whole experience of this post-pandemic world where we're just valuing different things.
Yeah, I kind of like that as well. Like, I honestly do think that the last couple of years has led to a very big values and paradigm shift. And I really like that we're seeing that across dating as well, because I just think that it's one of those things where you need to make sure that what you're doing is enriching your life and making you happy. And I think when you come across something as giant as a pandemic and lockdown, it really makes you reevaluate stuff. And I'm loving that that's carrying on through dating.
Yeah. And we're going to get to this in a little bit, but a lot of people broke up during the pandemic. And I think that was because of this increased focus on like what we actually want and our values. So a lot of people realize that maybe the person that they were with wasn't the right person for them for those reasons, because when you take away all of the superficial things and just get down to, when I'm stuck in the house with you, do I like you? Then that really like brought a lot of things to bear. And I know, having been single throughout lockdown, but having observed a lot of my friends and family relationships, it's like those either got a lot stronger or they ended. It really made or break a lot of couples.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of what you just said, that real focus and shift in terms of values.
I think the pandemic highlighted to each person as an individual how valuable their time is, basically. How am I spending my time working? How am I spending my time dating? How am I spending my time doing hobbies, etc.? So I think there's been a re-evaluation of those priorities in one's individual personal life, and we're going, don't have time for this rubbish dating or dating against not what I want or who I want, etc., etc.
Yeah, it's nothing like a world crisis to make us all reevaluate what we want in life.
But if positivity comes from it, that's good, I suppose.
Especially if you're single now. Like, I look back on the pre-time, like the before times, and I'm like, how did we get up, get in the office by 8:30 every day with an outfit on and a full face of makeup and stay there till 6 p.m. and do that 5 days in a row, and then work out a time to go to all your appointments, do your washing, go to the shop. Like, I just can't. I know I'll never be able to do that again. Like, I'll never.
No. And it makes me really sad when you hear about offices trying to make people do that. I'm like, why? We spent years proving to you that we did not need to do this.
Yeah.
And that we could actually be happy and do our job and get everything done.
I know I'll never be able to go into an office 5 days a week again.
Yeah.
Unless it's 5 minutes from my house and I can go in my pajamas.
Yeah.
So, like, I think it's the same with all different aspects of your life. We've reassessed how we want to spend our time, and it looks different.
Yeah. All right. Well, what else looks different about dating in 2023?
Well, the other thing that looks different is travel, because that is something that has probably changed the most, or not changed the most, but it was the one thing that was really off the table, especially in Australia during the pandemic. And I think pretty much everyone that I know has booked a holiday this year if they didn't go on one last year, because everyone feels they're owed one, which they probably are.
They're owed many.
Yes.
And so 33% of people are open to this concept of wonder love, bit of an eat, pray, love dating moment, and dating someone while on holiday or outside of their city or town, which I think is really exciting, because it speaks to a lot of the themes we've already covered, which is like, when you date someone on holiday, you are often a more authentic version of yourself. I've been on some dates when I've been overseas where I've just like been 100% myself.
You're just freer because you're like, well, it's a fling on holiday. No one's going to see me.
Yeah. And I've had some of the best dates of my life with people where I wasn't pretending anything, because I'm going to see you maybe another time while I'm here, but there's no point. I'm not going to pretend that I am interested in cricket, because I'm not. Like, I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just going to be myself, and you're going to be yourself, and we're going to have like a really amazing connection. And I hope that people do use Bumble while they're on their international holidays or even domestic holidays. I hope they have some holiday romances, but I also think we take a bit of that energy into dating at home as well and be more authentic and more honest with each other.
I was going to say, if you're going to date someone in another country while you're traveling and you're in Barcelona and you're going, no, I'm not going to pretend to enjoy football and spicy food why would I pretend to do all the... But then take that attitude to dating when you're at home. Why would I pretend to like cricket when I don't like cricket just to appease this person?
You're like, I've got a week with this person, so I'm going to tell them absolutely everything that I like sexually so that we can have the deed done in the best way possible. Why would you not do that when you're back at home?
But if you wouldn't pretend to enjoy something for a foreigner thousands of miles away.
Don't fake it for someone you don't know. Don't do it at home either.
In the same there you go.
Yeah. The sex thing is really interesting as well because you're just going to be like, nope, don't like that. Yes, like that. Do like you're just getting down to business.
Yes.
You know?
And we've got not much time.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to think about it like that and why we do this dance of, okay, I'm going to like do all these things in the early stages and then I'm going to have to circle back like in 3 months' time, be like, oh, I actually don't want to come watch you play cricket because I know I said I would on our first date, but I actually couldn't think of any worse way to spend my Saturday.
Yeah, no, I kind of want to bring that energy into my entire life, really. Like if I wouldn't do it on holiday, I'm not going into the office anymore. Goodbye.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's that reevaluating what's important. And if you've only got a limited amount of time, why not show up as your most authentic self?
Yeah, exactly.
And so for the fifth trend, what have we got?
This one's a big one. This one's about modern masculinity.
Nice.
And this is men specifically, people who identify as men. 74% of them say that in the last year they have examined their behavior and have more of a clear understanding of toxic masculinity. I can see your face, Liz. I know it might not feel that way.
Look, no, I'm just thinking, I love it. Do you know what? Like, I'm just, the fact that people are being introspective, I mean, regardless of gender, is a wonderful thing to be introspective. But having been on the tail end of some quite toxic masculinity in the dating sphere, it's 78%, you said, or 74%?
74%.
The fact that 74% of those people surveyed have been introspective about what modern masculinity should be and what toxic masculinity is actually pretty fucking fantastic, if you don't mind me saying so.
Absolutely. To my brothers out there that are in that 74% or aren't in that 74%, trust me, there's some area, some aspect in your personal life or your friendship circle, or your professional arena, something that you need to. It's not need to address because you're not specifically a problem, but turn over those leaves, have a rummage, because there'll be someone in your circles who's toxic or a shrapnel of your behavior. Just because you have a piece of bad behavior in your life doesn't make you a terrible person. You're allowed to address it and better yourself and move on.
One of the stats that I'm looking at from the lunch that we chatted about was that more than half the men on Bumble, so 52%, are now actively challenging stereotypes that suggest that men should not show emotions for fear of appearing weak. And I fucking love that. That's specifically because, Tom, I know that you've always been a huge proponent on this podcast of men showing emotions and going with your feelings, but that's not the case for a lot of men outside of this podcast, and that's what we try to help with. And so the fact that people are being, like, I think being in touch with your feelings is it's the number one thing on my dating list, is having a good grasp of empathy and being in touch with feelings. So I think it's great that over half are actively challenging those stereotypes.
It's very encouraging. Well done, boys. Yeah. Keep going.
And I think especially like when it comes to dating, and again, I'll preface this is in heterosexual relationships. Mm-hmm. This is what women want from you.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, what do women want? They want you to tell them how you feel. They want you to talk about your feelings, you know, like I think a lot of the hesitance to talk about feelings comes from other men, and it's reinforced by, you know, the patriarchy, and men police it in other men much more than women do. And I think if men can do their best to try and challenge those stereotypes and stop policing each other's behavior and really allow themselves that space to be emotional, I think, you know, that's where so many of these issues begin and end is like with the way that men are between each other, not even necessarily the way they are with women.
That's one of the reasons why I love the show Ted Lasso, is that there's a really amazing depiction of men getting together in groups just to talk about their feelings in a way that is still like there are still masculine, manly men in those groups, and you can still have like it doesn't mean you have to go completely feminine and, you know, and completely shun your masculinity. There are ways to be in touch with your feelings and still be, you know, the manliest of Roy Kent kind of men in that particular show.
I think there are much more positive role models for men emerging in this space. Matt Agnew is someone that we've worked with who was on The Bachelor, who has some great content that he puts on his social media about this for men. And I think it really is so much more impactful when it comes from other men. And I think there are a lot more Australian men in the public eye that are getting better at this. But for a long time, there's been a real absence of, you know, who is the male version of Lizzo for young men to aspire to, you know, who is the, you know, who can they look up to that they find relatable, you know, where they people that they see themselves in, you know. Men actually in a lot of ways still get modeled very, you know, look at who's on the cover of Men's Health every month. It's not very body diverse, you know. What's being modeled to men as the peak version of masculinity is very restrictive.
And even in the last like week or so, there's been a lot of people up in arms that Sam Smith shouldn't be wearing the type of clothes that they're wearing, which is a lot of, you know, flamboyant jumpsuits and things like that, because they've got a bigger body type. Whereas someone like Lizzo is like everyone's celebrating. You know, it shows that we've still got, even when role models are put up there, we've still got to have the right attitude towards them.
Yeah, or Harry Styles wears a dress and all anyone wants to ask if he's gay or not.
Yeah, or hell breaks loose.
Didn't we? We lived as a society. We lived through the 70s. We had more trans like David Bowie came through the 70s. We had all of this already. Why are we shocked? Why isn't it? Why is it a surprise? Calm down.
Yeah,
let people wear what they want to wear.
Yeah. But one thing that I find really encouraging, and I know there's probably a lot of women listening to this that like haven't had this experience, and I totally understand that. I think we've all had, you know, if you date straight men, you've probably had negative experiences with how gender roles play out. But nearly 60% of men, people who identify as men on Bumble in Australia, recognize that breaking gender roles in dating is also good for them. And I think that is kind of at the center of everything that we're trying to show at Bumble, is that we aren't just doing this for women, even though we are passionate about helping women. We really believe that by breaking down these gender roles, it actually improves dating and relationships for everyone who's dating.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. Like, how can it not? The only people that it will not benefit are the people who are toxic.
Exactly.
Because they'll get found out.
If we are going to tell women you can be everything and have everything, and you can stay at home, or you can be the boss at work, or you can do all of these things, like, we need to tell men that's okay as well. It's okay. Like, this one thing I really hate is this concept of the breadwinner, you know. There doesn't need to be a breadwinner. And it doesn't have to be the man, you know, but men still have this like concept ingrained in them that like they must provide for their family. And it's like, I wish more men felt like they could stay at home with their kids, you know, and, you know, take paternity leave and do all of these things.
But even in those roles, and I've been talking to a few friends and family about this, even when, say, the guy is the one that goes out and does the work, there's the implication that means the woman should be doing all of the housework, and that's just not the way. Like, they're not a live-in maid. And I still think that even if one person is going out, there should still be a shared division of labor. Like, it's not like, well, I earned money, so you need to vacuum under my feet while I'm sitting on the couch, you know?
I know I often say, because I don't really know if I want to have kids or not, but I often think like, well, I would do it if I could be like a 90s dad, you know, and like come home at the end of the day and like put my feet up and like have dinner made for me. And like, yeah, I'm sure that's awesome, but like it's not reflective of reality.
No, and it's not only the men who get to enjoy that, like either or. There needs to be a division of these kinds of things. And I always said that relationships are currency, right? So if you're contributing financially, yeah, you don't have to do as much of the contributing in doing jobs, but it doesn't mean that just because you're a man, you don't do the housework and you do the work. Like you've got to divide that up and figure out what works for you in a relationship. But I'm all for breaking down gender roles.
Absolutely.
For it.
Men, there's a reason we kill ourselves in greater quantities than anyone else. There's a reason we kill each other in greater quantities than anyone else. But we can turn around. It's okay. We can take the time to examine yourself. Take the time to examine behavior. Take the time to examine behavior in your social circles. We can clean it. We can clean up together. We got a baby boy.
I love it. So the last thing on the list is dating renaissance. Explain to us what this means.
Yes. So we gave a little preview of this earlier, but this trend is reflective of the fact that over 40% of people using Bumble right now in Australia had a significant relationship breakup in the last 2 years. So they ended a marriage or a long-term relationship and they're now using Bumble for the first time, which when you think about what the experience is like of using a dating app for the first time versus more seasoned dating app users and these people all blending together.
It's terrifying, Lucille. It's terrifying.
So if you are, like you mentioned that you had some older listeners, I don't know how old, but, if you are been through a divorce, you've got kids, you've had your family, you missed the last 5 to 10 years where dating apps really came on the scene and you're now dipping your toe in that again, you're probably mind blown, like, what is this? You've missed all of the like social conversation around like what to put in your bio, like the pineapple on pizza debate, like, that they've missed all of they don't understand that shared language, that all those codes, the things that you have to learn by doing. And, I think it's just really fascinating to think about how they are then matching with people who might have been using the apps for years on and off and understand that shared language much more intimately and how we can help people feel comfortable to be upfront about the fact that they are new to this type of dating.
I think it's kind of adorable though, like, and I'm not meaning to be like, oh, that's so cute, because someone described me as middle-aged the other day and I nearly had a heart attack and then went, oh God, they're almost right. But I think it's really kind of nice when someone admits that they don't know how all of this works, because it is showing vulnerability in a situation where you're trying to put yourself out there. And I find it really appealing when people are happy to admit that they have no idea what this language is, that they thought LOL meant lots of love for a really long time until it got real awkward when someone died and they went, oh no, LOL.
LOL.
So, Lucille, is there a Bumble cheat sheet or something for the new time user, or who's, not first time, maybe first time on a dating app user? Is there information? How do we get it to them?
I mean, it's a bit of a trial and error. Like I had a friend message me the other day who's in his early 30s saying, he's been through a breakup and he's dating for the first time in 10 years. And he was like, what is going on? What has happened?
How did this happen? How do I do this?
And I was like, you just have to go on some dates, and that's even my advice to people that are experienced app users is go on some dates, talk to some people, try it out and learn through doing, because, you really have to bite the bullet. And if you don't kind of dive in head first, you may never take the full plunge, because it is a really intimidating thing to do for the first time. But this advice is probably more relevant to women, but it probably applies to men as well. I have most of my conversations with women, and I think that one thing that I think is very prevalent in Australia is this one at a time kind of dating attitude, where we don't have as much of a dating culture as New York, London, where you might match with one person and you have a nice conversation with them, and then you have another conversation with them the next day, and then they ask you out on a date or you ask them out on a date, and then you go on that date and you're by that stage very invested, because no matter whether this has been a couple of days or a week or a few weeks, you've kind of built up who you think this person is without maybe hearing their voice or, really getting to know them. So then by the time you go on that date, you've built up this idea in your head of who they are and you're very invested. And then if it doesn't work out, you not only feel devastated, but then you feel like you're starting from
That's a big knock. Yeah.
Right.
It's like, it's actually okay to be talking to a few different people. It's encouraged to be matching with a few different people, talking to a few different people, seeing what you like, what you don't like, going on dating casually in order to try and find what you're looking for. And one of the best Bumble profiles I've ever seen encapsulate this, it said casually looking for something serious. And it's like, that's what you're doing, you are testing different types of dates, different types of people out. And it doesn't mean that you are, being promiscuous or that you aren't being serious about dating. It means that, you're just adapting to the culture, and it should be fun. Like going on dates, talking to people, it's meant to be a fun, exciting process. And if you aren't finding it fun and exciting, if you're finding it stressful and anxiety inducing, try and do something differently, And when it comes to actually setting up, an app profile, it's things like be honest about what you're looking for, be authentic to who you are. And if you're really struggling with that, get your friend to write your bio for you, because that is the thing people struggle with the most. Is most people know how to pick photos where they look good.
Yes.
We're all on Instagram.
I mean, you would think that, but there's still profiles that have people wearing glasses in every damn shot. If I cannot see your eyes, I do not trust you.
Yeah, okay. We'll cover a few of those basics. Firstly, no sunglasses.
No sunglasses, people.
No sunglasses. Only one photo with a dog. You cannot have a dog.
Yes.
And a dog or a baby, not both. You can't have both. And then your first photo should be just you.
Yes.
Selfie, but tell the people who you are. And then you can have group photos of you with your friends if you want. But if I have to spend too much time working out who you are, I may not bother. So
Agreed.
Those are the basics on the photo advice. But then people really get hung up on the written portion. So it's a good idea to get a friend to write it for you, and you can edit it. But sometimes our friends describe us much better than how we describe ourselves.
See, I love that. I was going to suggest getting a friend to vet your profile, but actually getting your friend to write the bio is such a good idea, because no one's going to be a bigger champion for what your best qualities are than the people who you hang out with frequently and who know you super well and who aren't self-conscious about talking about your best qualities.
Yeah, because we're very self-deprecating in Australia. And
I've made a career out of it, Lucille.
Lucille, is there anything in particular that men need to stop doing on dating profiles to stop?
Oh, there's a few things. I would say this is actually the number one thing, and this is blanket advice for everyone, but I look to date men, so I mostly see men's profiles, and this is something that I see come up a lot, and it's that leading with the negative. It's not looking for hookups, or not looking for this, or don't swipe left if you're this.
Right.
It's so argumentative right off the bat,
really
isn't it?
Aggressive. And also, even if I feel aligned with what you're saying, you've turned me off with your negging kind of attitude. So say the example we used was not looking for hookups. Looking for a relationship is going to get you so much more than, because everyone's going to see you being looking for hookups and be like, you look like a bit of an idiot. So I'm going to, so leading with the positive, and then also leading with things that will help start conversation. So if it's if you use the prompt, where can I find you in the mornings? And it's or what's your, top 3 things you want to do? And it's CrossFit, pottery, and pizza. It's okay, well, but if you're I love CrossFit for this reason, my favorite flavor pizza is this, what's yours? Those are that exact, the last time I did crockery was this, or or if you're like, I love to travel and that's it. If it's like, I love to travel, the last place I went was Mexico, I want to go to Fiji next. It's like adding those conversations, like building conversation starters into your profile prompts and into your bio. So if I look at a profile and it's like, love to travel, I'm like, yeah, great. So who doesn't?
Does everyone. Yeah.
If I see one that's like just been to Mexico or like want to go to Mexico, I'm like, same. I'll talk to them about this.
You're making it as easy as possible for someone to talk to you about something.
Yeah. Or it's like, I like music. Well, is there a human being on this planet?
I hate music. Hate it.
What kind of music do you like?
Yeah.
What is your favorite band? Have you linked your Spotify? Can I see what your top artists are? Like all these kind of things. The aim of the game is to like get a match, but then have a conversation with that person.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are you adding to your bio? What are you adding to your profile that's going to help make those connections and start those conversations?
The other red flag that I've seen on profiles for both men and women when I've been helping other people swipe left or right on people is that when you're writing a profile, I'm firmly of the belief that it should be advertising you, not seeking person who,
Yes.
you see all of these profiles that are like, I want someone who is this, 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 and this. And I'm like, well, you've told me nothing about yourself other than that you're picky.
Yes.
So why should I swipe on you? Like it's meant to be an ad for yourself, not a services seeking ad for someone else,
Yeah, especially when those things are something that person could just filter themselves.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you're
going to
self-select
if I'm blonde or not.
Yeah, like you're not helping yourself by telling people what you're not looking for. If you only want blondes, just only swipe on blondes, and like no one needs to know that you were weirdly picky about that.
It's like walking. It's like walking into the town centre and ringing a big bell and yelling, "Here are all the things I don't like," and expecting people on the street to be like, "Great, how can I help you?"
Nobody wants the guy who hates everything.
I hate this. I hate that. Great.
Let's get married.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, like if you were in a bar and you saw someone that didn't meet your requirements, would you be like, not you? No,
you're not what I'm looking for. Go away.
Absolutely not. Look, Lucille, thank you so much for coming and talking us through the landscape that is dating at the moment. It's so refreshing to see that majority of those trends are about being authentic and going after what you actually want and reevaluating what's important in your life, because that's something that we always talk about on this podcast. And I think that Bumble is helping making the dating landscape that little bit less scary for some people.
Yes, some wonderful initiatives for 2023.
Tom, have you learned anything in particular this episode?
One question, not something I've learned, but I want to know, since the launch of Bumble and it came out as a vehicle for women to message first, what's been the feedback from women as a unity, as a whole, as a collective?
We're just one thing,
on
are
the
we, Tom?
on having an app where they have more control, they have more impetus to message first.
It's overwhelmingly positive, but also like it is challenging.
It's a lot of pressure, man. Like I remember when I was on Bumble and I was like, yes, I love this. And then I was like, oh God, now I need to think of something to say. But I liked taking control of the situation and not just opening up my inbox to a whole bunch of, dirty stuff, really.
Yeah. I mean, prior to Bumble existing, one of the biggest tension points on dating apps was like unwanted messages and unwanted contact, and also really aggressive initial contact, because you have that dynamic. And I think that, this was 2016 when Whitney first launched Bumble, but I think it is changing, but you had this dynamic of men feeling like if they were trying to date women, that they had to be really aggressive about it and they had to go all in. And there was such a fear of rejection that they had to be almost aggressive about it and have this, bad attitude. And rejection actually is a really normal part of dating, and we all should get a lot more comfortable with it. But the idea of women starting the conversation is that it takes away that aggressive I mean, in most cases, I'm sure there have been some aggressive women out there, but in theory, it takes that initial bite out of that conversation and changes that dynamic. And so we get overwhelmingly positive feedback from women that have been like, it actually inspired me to take control in other parts of my life as well. And that idea of making the first move, like once I did it, I realized it wasn't that scary, you know, and it actually can empower you in so many other ways as well. I know working at Bumble and like living this ethos has really made me value having control and feel more confident in putting yourself out there in myriad different ways, you know, but it is really challenging and scary, but I would encourage more women to do it because it is very empowering at the same time.
And also it gave me a little bit of a dose of empathy of what, you know, straight men in a patriarchal society, the pressure that is on them to come up with something to open a conversation. That's freaking hard. And it kind of makes you go, okay, so if this is a tenth of what people feel, then I totally get why sometimes people are complete derps in the first couple of minutes of talking to them because it's really hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we've actually built some features around that. So we introduced a feature called Questions Game during the pandemic, actually, because one of the things in the especially early pandemic was like no one really had anything to talk about.
No. What are you doing? Nothing. What are you doing? Wearing pajamas?
Yeah. And so what Questions Game is, you can use it as your first move or you can use it anytime during a chat and you ask your match a question, but you have to also answer that question and it gets revealed, both of your responses get revealed once you've both answered.
Oh, I like
so it's kind of a fun way. And there's like pre-loaded questions in there, or you can create your own.
Great.
One of the most popular in Australia is like, what is the supreme flavor of Smith's chips? That gives you the idea of like the type of conversations people are having. It's
I like
very
to burn my
divisive.
tongue off with salt and vinegar.
Yes. Yeah, so it's like
it is crisp royalty, salt and vinegar. I will consider.
Anyone sour cream and onion, you're out. Off my list.
It tells you a lot about a person. If it's chicken, sorry, we can't talk.
Trash tier.
Oh, and then that gets playful banter happening as well. Exactly. I remember I used to ask people, my opening line for a while before everybody else started using it was crunchy or smooth peanut butter. People like
I'll tell you mine that you're welcome to use if you ever need it. And it's what's your favourite Arnott's biscuit?
Okay.
See, I'm a bit controversial with that one. Mine's a Kingston.
Yeah, see, if someone says like a Monte Carlo, then you're like, you're fun at parties.
Yeah.
You know? If someone says it's like a milk arrowroot, you're not fun at parties. You know, you learn a lot.
I feel like by saying a Kingston, they're like, okay, well, you're the nana of the group.
You like a cup of tea.
I do. A little dunking, little rug around my shoulders. I'm not that old, but I feel it sometimes.
Crisps and cups of tea. It's my two of my favorite things in the world.
Amazing.
We need to wrap up so I can go home and have a big cup of tea. And some
Lucille, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes,
that's Lucille McCart, who is the Communications Director for Bumble in Australia. It has been wonderful to have you and to have your wonderful dating insights so that we could all learn a thing or two. If you have learnt something from today's episode or if you have recognised some of the dating trends out in the dating world, we want to hear your stories. Write into us at ghostsofboyfriendspast@gmail.com. We will talk about these kinds of things in an upcoming Quickie episode.
Yeah, otherwise jump on Facebook. We've got a little self-running group there, Ghosts of Boyfriends Past. What's that called? Group therapy. Members post their own questions, their own comments. Past guests of the show pop up there, so little mini celebrity cameos from past guests join us there. Please rate and review our show. We love when you do. It helps us out, helps us put us on charts all around the world on this here blue marble of ours. Apart from that, we once again thank Lucille for being eloquent and knowing her stuff and really helping us out on this week's episode. Elizabeth, any final words?
Look, I just think that everybody should really be reevaluating what they want in their dating life. And as long as you're honest about it, then you're going to find someone that's perfect for you. So everybody, when you're writing your profile, be honest about what you're looking for because you're going to weed out the bastards.